Folks, you won't believe what I have to tell you today. I'm Ruth, and here on this channel, every day I bring you a new story, a new piece of gossip I see behind the scenes in my neighborhood. And today, oh my God, today I have a story that will make your hair stand on end. It's about my neighbor Marina, who every single night leaves the house with a different man, while her husband, Carlos, stays at home, watching TV as if nothing were happening. Can you imagine? I honestly couldn't believe what I was seeing. Look, before I start telling you everything in minute detail, I need you to do one little thing for me. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, because folks, the stories I have to tell are never-ending, and leave a comment telling me what you think is happening. But for God's sake, don't leave the video, because the ending of this story is so surprising, it will leave you speechless. I guarantee it. It all started about 3 weeks ago. I was here in my living room as usual, sipping my evening tea and glancing out the window. Because, let's face it, we always want to know what's going on in the neighborhood, don't we? It was a Tuesday. I remember it well because that soap opera I like was on. It must have been around 9:30 at night. That's when I saw Marina leaving the house. Nothing special there, right? A woman has every right to go out. But what caught my attention was how well dressed she was, you know? It wasn't the outfit you'd wear to the grocery store or the pharmacy. It was the outfit you'd wear to somewhere special. A pretty dress, high heels, a small bag. The kind you only use when you want to impress someone. And then, folks, that's when things got interesting. A car pulled up in front of her house, a car I'd never seen on our street before. It was a well-maintained black sedan, and a man got out. A man I didn't know who clearly wasn't Carlos. He was taller than Carlos, younger too. Dark, well-groomed hair. Marina left the house, greeted the man with a smile. A smile that, folks, wasn't just any smile. It was the smile of someone happy to see that person. They chatted a bit there on the sidewalk. She got in the car, and they both drove away. I stood there holding my teacup, trying to process what I'd just seen. Because, look, Carlos was home. The television was on. I could see the blue light from it through their living room window. So, does that mean Marina went out with another man while her husband was home? Back in my day, that had a name, and it wasn't a pretty one. But then I thought, Ruth, calm down. It could be a cousin, a family friend, I don't know. Don't jump to conclusions. But my friends, something in my chest was telling me that it wasn't quite like that. Marina returned in the early hours of the morning. It was almost 2 in the morning when I heard the car pull up in front of her house. I wasn't sleeping. You know how it is when you're so worried you can't sleep. I went to the window, lifted the curtain a corner, and saw her getting out of the same car, saying goodbye to the same man. Only this time, the goodbye was, how can I put it, longer. They stood there talking for about 5 minutes, she leaning against the car door, he outside. And when she finally got home, I swear I saw her look back, as if she didn't want the moment to end. Guys, I spent the whole night thinking about this. Did Carlos know? Did they have some kind of arrangement? Was their marriage in trouble? 1,001 theories ran through my head. The next day, Thursday, I kept an eye on him. Carlos left for work early in the morning, as usual. He works at an accounting firm downtown and always leaves at 7:30. Marina also left, but much later, around 10 in the morning. She works at a clothing store in the mall, so her schedule has always been more flexible. During the day, everything was normal. They returned home at their usual times. Carlos arrived at 6, Marina at 7. I could see them through the windows, having dinner, watching TV, like a normal couple. But I was anxious to see what would happen that night. And wouldn't you know it, it happened again. At 9:40 in the evening, Marina came out all dressed up, This time the car was different. It was a red hatchback, sportier, and the man was different too. Shorter, blonde, wearing glasses. My God, what was going on in that house? This time I paid attention to every detail. Marina was wearing a navy blue dress, a color that, let me tell you, looks absolutely gorgeous on her. Her hair was loose, wavy, the way it takes hours to create. And her perfume. Even from my window I could smell she was wearing a different, more striking perfume. The blonde man was even kinder than the first. He got out of the car, opened the door for her, and waited for her to settle in before closing it. Details that, let's face it, not every husband does after years of marriage. And Carlos was still there, in the living room, watching what appeared to be a soccer game. This time I couldn't stay awake until she got back. But the next day, Friday, I woke up early and went to check. The red car was gone, of course, but something was different. Marina left home later than usual, almost noon, and she had that look on her face, like she hadn't slept enough. You know those dark circles hidden with concealer? Yeah, Friday night, folks. Friday night was the height of it, because it wasn't just one man. It was two different men. The first showed up at 8:30. A black SUV, tinted windows, and a tall, well-dressed, dark-skinned man. Marina left with him but returned within an hour. An hour! I timed it, and when she returned, she didn't go inside. She stayed on the porch, fiddling with her cell phone. 20 minutes later, another car arrived. This time it was a blue convertible, and the man driving it looked younger than everyone else. He had a tattoo on his arm and wore a tight black t-shirt. Marina got in his car and didn't return until dawn. Man, I was going crazy. What was going on? How could Carlos not see any of this? Or was he just watching and pretending not to? Were they in an open relationship? Was Marina having a midlife crisis? Or worse, was she involved in something dangerous? Over the weekend I watched. On Saturday they went out together, Marina and Carlos. They went to the supermarket, came back together, and spent the day at home. They seemed like a normal couple. They watched a movie, had a barbecue in the backyard, and had a visit from Carlos's parents. Everything was very normal, very family-like. But on Sunday night, there she was again, going out with a different man. This time it was a white pickup truck, and the man looked older, had gray hair, and wore a light blue dress shirt. And Marina? My goodness. Marina was radiant, smiling in a way I rarely saw her smile when she was with Carlos. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every day the same. Different men, different cars, more or less the same schedules. And Carlos, always at home, always in front of the television, as if nothing were happening. I started taking notes. Yes, notes! Because, man, this was too weird to be a coincidence. I started jotting down the times, the color of the cars, the men's features. And you know what I discovered? There was a pattern. Marina always left between 9 and 10 at night. She always returned between 1 and 3 in the morning. The men were always polite, always got out of their cars to greet her, always opened the door for her. And she always left well-dressed, always dressed differently, always with that smile I hadn't seen in a long time. But what intrigued me most was Carlos's reaction. Or rather, his lack of reaction. Did he really not know? Was he pretending he didn't know? Or did he know and allow it? In the second week of observation, I decided to change my strategy. Instead of just observing Marina, I started paying attention to Carlos as well. And then, man, I started noticing things that had previously gone unnoticed. Carlos wasn't just passive. He had a very specific routine on the days Marina was out. First, he made dinner early. Second, he always showered and changed his clothes when he got home from work, something he didn't do on other days. Third, he always turned on the television to the same channel, always watching the same shows. And fourth, he always stayed awake until Marina returned. I could see through the window that the living room television was on until Marina arrived, and as soon as she entered, the house went dark within minutes. It was as if they had a set routine, as if this was all planned. But planned how? Why? For what? It was in the 3rd week that I decided I needed to find out more. I couldn't sleep well anymore. I couldn't focus on my own things anymore. That mystery was consuming my thoughts. So, one Thursday, I did something I never thought I would do. I left the house. Yes, folks, you heard that right. I left the house at the same time Marina usually did, and walked to the corner, pretending to take out the trash. I wanted to see it up close. I wanted to better understand what was going on. And that's when I saw something that confused me even more. The man who came to pick Marina up that day wasn't any of the men I'd seen before. He was a man in his 60s, driving a very simple car, a somewhat old white sedan, and their conversation was different too, quicker, more direct. She got in the car, and they left without the usual long conversation. Guys, don't look away, because what I discovered after this will surprise you in ways you can't even imagine. I was creating 1,000 theories in my head, and none of them, not one, came close to the truth. The following Friday, something happened that completely changed my perspective on the whole situation. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard loud voices coming from Marina's house. It wasn't a fight, more like a heated argument. I caught a few stray words. Tired. I can't take it anymore. I need a solution. I thought, okay, now the truth is going to come out. Marina is going to confess to Carlos what's going on, or Carlos is going to confront Marina about the men. I stayed glued to the window trying to hear something else, but the conversation quickly stopped, and soon after I saw Carlos leaving the house. This was strange because he usually only went out on days when Marina was home. He got in his car and left, and Marina stayed. At 9 o'clock in the evening, as usual, a car arrived to pick Marina up. This time it was a white van, a commercial-style van, driven by a bald middle-aged man wearing a striped shirt. Marina got in the van, and they left. But Carlos wasn't home to see it. He'd gone out, and that made me wonder, did he deliberately go out on the days Marina had these dates? Did he know her routine and choose not to be there? On Saturday morning, I decided to do something that might seem extreme, but I needed answers. I decided to strike up a conversation with Marina. It's not that I never talked to her. We'd say hello when we met at the market, exchange a few words about the weather, the plants in the garden, those neighborly things. But we'd never had a real conversation, so I made up an excuse. I said I was baking a cake and had forgotten to buy eggs. Could she lend me some? Marina was super friendly, invited me in, offered me coffee. And there, sitting in her kitchen, I had the opportunity to observe the house from the inside and try to understand a little more about the couple's life. The first thing that struck me was how organized the house was. Everything was very clean, very tidy, but there was a feeling of, how can I put it, emptiness. There weren't many photos of the couple around the house, nor were there any of those personal objects that couples tend to accumulate over the years. Marina was tired, I could tell. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes, seemed tense, distracted. During our conversation, she checked her phone several times, as if waiting for an important message. At one point, I risked an indirect question. Marina, are you well? I see you going out a lot at night lately. She was a little disconcerted, but replied, Oh, Ruth, it's just that I have some extra commitments. You know how it is. Sometimes our lives change from one moment to the next and we have to adapt. Extra commitments. What kind of commitments would a married person have every night with different men? And why did she seem so tired and stressed if those commitments were something positive? Carlos arrived home in the middle of our conversation. He greeted us, was polite, but I noticed he and Marina exchange a look. It wasn't the look of a couple in love. It wasn't a look of romantic complicity. It was a look of understanding, as if they knew something I didn't. After that day, I intensified my observations, and I began to notice details that had previously escaped me. For example, Marina always carried a large bag when she went out at night, but returned with a small one, and sometimes I saw her arriving home with bags, as if she'd been shopping. But what kind of shopping does someone do in the middle of the night? And the cars, folks. The cars were all different, but they all had one thing in common. They looked like cars for working people, ordinary people. They weren't luxury cars. They weren't flashy cars. They were normal cars, driven by ordinary men. This made me wonder if Marina wasn't involved in some kind of work. But what kind of work would that be? And why didn't she talk about it with Carlos? Why did everything seem like a secret? The following week, I decided to be more strategic in my observations. I bought a small pair of binoculars, the kind you see at department stores, you know. Nothing too professional, but they allowed me to see the details better. And I positioned a comfortable chair near the living room window, from which I had a perfect view of Marina's house. And that's when I started discovering things that intrigued me even more. First, I noticed that Marina always checked her phone before going out. She'd stand on the porch, looking at the street, as if waiting for some sign or confirmation. And then, she'd always text. I'd see her typing on her phone before putting it away in her purse. On Monday of the 4th week, a different man appeared. He was thin, wore a cap, and drove an old-fashioned van, the kind you don't see so often on the streets these days. And you know what caught my attention? Marina took longer to leave the house. She went to the car, talked to him through the window, returned home, grabbed something. It looked like a folder or a large envelope, and then got into the van. Man, this was getting weirder and weirder. What kind of extramarital relationship involves documents? What kind of romantic encounter requires folders and envelopes? On Tuesday, something happened that nearly knocked me out of my chair. It was a rainy day, the kind where we prefer to stay home and watch a movie under a blanket. But at 9 o'clock sharp, Marina came out. She was wearing a yellow raincoat and carrying a large umbrella. The man who came to pick her up was also prepared for the rain. He'd parked his car right in front of the gate so she wouldn't get too wet. But what really surprised me was that, this time, I saw Carlos at the window. He was there standing at the bedroom window watching Marina get into the car. And his expression, man, it wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was worried. As if he was worried about her. As if he knew she was doing something dangerous or difficult. When Marina returned that night, she was soaked. Even with her raincoat, even with her umbrella, she was wet. And tired. More tired than I'd ever seen her. She stood on the porch for about 5 minutes, as if gathering strength to go inside. Carlos opened the door before she even knocked. And then, folks, I saw a scene that made me question all my theories. He greeted her with a towel, a warm towel, which he must have heated in the dryer or microwave, and he hugged her. It wasn't a quick hug. It was a long, tight hug from someone who truly cares. How does a betrayed husband embrace his unfaithful wife with such affection? How does he prepare a warm towel to welcome her after a night with another man? None of this made sense. On Wednesday, I decided to change my strategy again. Instead of just observing from home, I started going for walks around the time Marina usually returned. I pretended I was having insomnia, that the doctor had recommended nighttime walks. Of course, this was a lie, but I needed an excuse to be out at that hour. And it was on one of these walks that I discovered something very interesting. Marina wasn't the only person on our street with a strange nighttime routine. 3 houses down, I saw a man leaving his house at 2 in the morning, in uniform, getting into a car that looked like it belonged to some company. 2 houses over, a woman always arrived between 2 and 3 in the morning, also in uniform. Was our entire street involved in something? Was there some kind of nightlife I wasn't aware of? But even so, that didn't explain why Marina went out with different men every night. Thursday was the day I almost discovered the truth by accident. I was returning from the market around 6 o'clock when I saw Marina leaving the house earlier than usual. She wasn't dressed up as usual. She was wearing normal clothes, jeans, and a simple blouse. And she was walking, not waiting for any car. Curious, I decided to follow her. I kept a safe distance, pretending I was just strolling around the neighborhood. Marina walked to the main avenue, went into a pharmacy, bought a few things, and then went to a coffee shop. She sat at a table near the window and stayed there, fiddling with her phone, as if waiting for someone. 15 minutes later, one of the men I'd seen before arrived. It was the tall, well-dressed, dark-skinned man, driving the black SUV. He sat at the table with Marina, and they began talking. But it wasn't a romantic conversation. It was a serious professional one. I could tell by his gestures and his body posture. Marina showed him papers and he jotted things down in a notebook. They talked for half an hour. At the end, he gave Marina an envelope, which she put in her purse. They shook hands. A handshake, folks, not a kiss, not a hug, and then went their separate ways. Marina walked home. I got home before her and watched through the window. When she came in, Carlos was waiting in the living room. They talked for a few minutes. She showed him the envelope, and then they had dinner together, as usual. That night at 9:30, Marina left again, this time with the blonde man in glasses, in the red car, and she didn't return until dawn, as always. Guys, leave your thoughts in the comments, because I swear I wasn't understanding anything anymore. Professional meetings in the afternoon, mysterious nights out, an overly understanding husband, envelopes, documents. What could Marina have been doing? Friday was the day of the turning point. Not the final turning point. That was still to come. But a turning point that completely changed my perspective on the situation. I was cleaning my house, organizing some old papers, when I found a flyer that had arrived in the mail weeks ago. It was from a security company, offering night surveillance services for the neighborhood. And suddenly, a light bulb went off in my head. What if Marina was working security? What if all these men were co-workers? What if she was working night shifts at different locations? That would explain the different cars, the different men, the regular schedules, and even Carlos's fatigue and understanding. But then I thought, why didn't she talk about work? Why all the secrecy? And why did she always come out so dressed up for a security job? On Saturday morning, I decided to test my theory. I made up a story about how I was thinking about hiring a security company for our street, and I asked Marina if she knew of any good ones. Her reaction was strange. She got nervous, stuttered a bit, and said she didn't understand much about the subject, that I should look it up online. But I could see in her eyes that she knew much more than she was letting on. That night, Saturday, Marina didn't go out. It was the first time in a month she'd stayed home on the weekend, and Carlos seemed surprised too. I saw them talking on the porch, a long, serious conversation. At one point, Marina seemed to be explaining something to him, gesturing a lot, and Carlos just listened and nodded. On Sunday, they left together in the morning and didn't return until evening, and Marina was different, less tense, more relaxed, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Sunday night, Marina went out again. But this time, I noticed details that had escaped me before. First, she was carrying a small cooler bag, the kind we use for snacks. Second, she was wearing comfortable shoes, not high heels as I'd thought. Third, she was wearing a jacket, even though it was hot. The man who came to pick her up was new to me, older, with gray hair, driving a blue van with some kind of sticker on the side. I couldn't read it, but it looked like a company logo. On Monday of the 5th week, I began a new phase of my investigation. I decided to search the internet for night jobs that could explain Marina's routine, and I found several possibilities: home nursing, elderly care, office cleaning, security, surveillance, and even work in 24-hour factories. But still, nothing explained why Marina went out with different people every night, why she dressed up so much, and why she and Carlos seemed so secretive about it. On Tuesday, something happened that almost made me give up on the entire investigation. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard the doorbell ring. It was Marina. She was standing at my door, with a serious, almost worried expression. "Ruth," she said, "can I talk to you for a minute?" My heart raced. Had she figured out I was watching? Had someone seen me following her to the diner? Had I gotten myself into a dangerous situation? I invited her in, offered her coffee, and tried to maintain my composure. Marina sat in my office and remained silent for a few seconds, as if choosing the right words. "Ruth, I know you're a discreet person, a respectful neighbor," she began, "and I wanted to ask you a favor." My heart was pounding so hard I thought she would hear it. "Lately, I've been seeing some strange people hanging around our street at night. Cars that aren't from the neighborhood. People who don't live here. You haven't seen anything suspicious, have you?" Guys, I almost laughed at the situation. Marina was asking me if I'd seen anything suspicious, when in fact I thought she was the one doing suspicious things. "No, Marina," I replied, trying to sound natural. "I haven't seen anything very different." "Why do you ask?" "Oh, Carlos is worried about the neighborhood's safety. You know how it is. We hear every story on television. He thinks we should be more vigilant." Marina stayed a few more minutes. We made small talk, and then she left. But that conversation made me even more curious. Was Marina really concerned about her safety? Or was she trying to find out how much I knew about her activities? That night, Marina didn't go out, and neither did she on Wednesday. 2 days in a row at home, something he hadn't done in weeks. And Carlos seemed more relaxed, too. They had dinner together on the balcony, watched TV, and did normal couple things. But on Thursday, the routine returned. Marina left at 9:30, this time with a man I'd never seen before. He was young, maybe 25, and drove a very simple white Gull, and Marina was wearing more casual clothes than usual. Dark jeans, and a white blouse. I was beginning to think that perhaps Marina worked in some kind of home care service. Perhaps she was a nurse or a caregiver, and saw different patients every night. This would explain the different men. They could be family members of the patients who came to pick her up. It would also explain her fatigue, her need for secrecy, due to medical privacy, and even Carlos's support. But there were still details that didn't fit this theory. Why did she dress up so much to care for the sick? Why were the men always so kind and respectful to her? And why did she sometimes return with bags, as if she'd been shopping? Friday of the 5th week was the day I finally decided I needed a definitive answer. I couldn't live with that curiosity eating away at me anymore. So I did something you might find a bit invasive, but I needed to know the truth. I decided to follow Marina all night. I packed everything: dark clothes, comfortable shoes, a bottle of water, even a small flashlight. At 9 o'clock, I was hiding behind a tree on the street corner, waiting for Marina to come out. At 9:20, Marina left home. This time, the car that came to pick her up was a silver pickup truck, driven by a middle-aged pot-bellied man wearing a plaid shirt. Marina got in the car, and they left. I got in my car. Yes, folks, I drive, even at 62, and started following them, keeping a safe distance. My heart was racing. I felt like a private detective in a crime movie. They took the main avenue, passed through the city center, and headed toward the industrial district. This intrigued me even more. What was Marina doing in the industrial district in the middle of the night? They stopped in front of a large warehouse with a sign I couldn't read well in the dark. Marina got out of the truck, spoke briefly with the man, and then entered the warehouse. The truck drove away. I parked on the next street, where I could see the warehouse entrance, and there I stood, waiting, trying to figure out what was going on. Over the next 3 hours, I saw numerous people coming and going from that warehouse. Men, women, people of all ages. Some arrived by car, others by bus, some even on foot. And they all seemed to be working, because they entered wearing one outfit and left wearing another, or entered empty-handed and left carrying things. At 1 a.m., Marina emerged from the warehouse. She looked different. She wore a uniform I couldn't quite make out in the dark, carried a bag, and looked tired, very tired. A different car came to pick her up. This time it was a white sedan, driven by a woman. I followed the car until I realized they were heading back to our neighborhood. But instead of going straight home, They stopped at a 24-hour gas station. Marina got out, went into the convenience store, bought a few things, and got back in the car. When they arrived at our street, it was 2:15 in the morning. Marina got out of the car, waved goodbye to the driver, and went into the house. I arrived a few minutes later, parked my car, and went straight to the window. Carlos was waiting for her awake, as always. But this time I could see their conversation through the lit kitchen window. They hugged, Marina showed him what she'd bought at the gas station, and Carlos heated up something in the microwave for her to eat. It was a scene of affection, of mutual care, of a couple caring for each other. It wasn't a scene of a betrayed husband and an unfaithful wife. It was a scene of two companions facing a difficult situation together. Guys, that night I went to bed with more questions than answers. What was Marina doing in that warehouse? Why did she have to work at night? Why did everything have to be so secret? And most importantly, why did I feel guilty for following her? The Saturday after the night I followed Marina to the warehouse, I woke up with a strange feeling. It was a mixture of satisfied curiosity and guilt. After all, I had invaded my neighbor's privacy, even if unintentionally. But at the same time, I was more confused than ever. During breakfast, I thought about everything I'd seen. That warehouse, the people coming and going, Marina in her uniform, her exhaustion, Carlos's affection. None of it matched my initial theories of betrayal or parallel relationships. Around 10 in the morning, I was watering the plants in the garden when I saw Marina coming out of the house. She was in her normal clothes, carrying an empty grocery bag. When she saw me, she waved and came over to the fence that separates our lots. "Good morning, Ruth. How are you?" "Hi, Marina. I'm fine, thank you. And you? You look tired." She gave a half-hearted laugh. "Oh, it's just that I haven't been sleeping well lately. You know how it is, sometimes life gets a little messy." I almost asked about the night shift, about the warehouse, about everything I'd seen the night before. But something held me back. Marina looked fragile, vulnerable, as if she were carrying a heavy weight on her shoulders. "If you need to talk, Marina, I'm here, okay? Sometimes it helps to vent to a neighbor." She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It was gratitude mixed with sadness, as if she really needed to talk, but couldn't. "Thank you, Ruth. You're very kind. Maybe one day I can explain some things." And she left, leaving that phrase hanging in the air like a promise. Over the weekend, I noticed Marina staying home more. She and Carlos did normal things. They went to the supermarket together, washed the car, and had their mother-in-law visit. They seemed like a normal couple, with no secrets, no mysteries. But on Monday night, the routine resumed. Marina left at 9:30 with a different man, this time a young, thin man, riding a motorcycle. This was new. Marina had never been out on a motorcycle before. I saw her put on a helmet, climb on the back of the bike, and ride away. And for the first time, I worried about her safety. Riding a motorcycle at night with a stranger. If it really was an extramarital affair, it would be very dangerous. If it was work, it was also dangerous. Marina returned at 2 in the morning, driven by another man in a different car. This time it was a white van, the kind used by delivery companies, and she was carrying 2 large, heavy bags, which the man helped her carry to her front door. On Tuesday, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to talk to Carlos. It was risky, I knew. If Marina really was cheating on her husband, I could be destroying a marriage. If it was something else, I could be meddling where I wasn't wanted. But I couldn't live with that doubt any longer. I waited for Carlos to get home from work, at 6 o'clock as usual. At 7, I knocked on their door. Marina answered, but I asked to speak to Carlos. "It's about neighborhood safety," I lied. "You mentioned to Marina that you were worried." Carlos came to the door, and I asked if I could speak with him privately. Marina seemed surprised, but didn't question it. We went out onto the sidewalk. "Carlos," I began nervously. "I don't really know how to say this, but I've seen some things that have me worried." He looked at me carefully, without interrupting. It's about Marina. I've been seeing her going out at night, always with different men, and I don't know what to think." Carlos was silent for a long time. I could see he was choosing his words, as if deciding how much to tell me. "Ruth," he said finally, "I appreciate your concern. I really do. But Marina's situation is complicated." "Complicated how?" He sighed deeply. "Marina's going through a rough time. She lost her job 2 months ago." "I didn't expect that." "Lost your job?" "The store where she worked closed. Crisis, right? And as you know, the job market isn't easy for people our age." I nodded, still trying to understand where he was going with this. "So she got a temp job. It's honest work, but she's embarrassed to talk about it." "What kind of work?" Carlos hesitated again. "She's doing some odd jobs at night. Cleaning, organizing, that kind of thing. The people who come to pick her up are colleagues or people who hire her." "Cleaning." "Of course." This explained the fatigue, the late-night hours, the different work locations, the different people, and it also explained why Marina was embarrassed. Many people think cleaning work is menial, which is a terrible prejudice. "But why doesn't she talk about it?" I asked. "You know how it is, Ruth. Marina was always proud. She worked in a beautiful store in the mall, dealt with customers, felt important, and now she was cleaning offices and buildings in the wee hours. I understood her embarrassment, though I thought it was completely unnecessary. "Carlos, honest work is never a cause for shame," I said. "I tell her that every day. But you know Marina. She cares a lot about what other people think." That night, I saw Marina leave with a different perspective. She was no longer a mysterious woman going on secret dates. She was a courageous woman, facing her difficulties head-on, working hard to support her family. But there were still things that didn't quite add up. Why did she dress so much for cleaning work? Why did she sometimes come home with shopping bags? And what was that warehouse I'd seen? On Wednesday, I decided to test Carlos's explanation. If Marina really was working as a cleaner, she probably had specific hours, fixed locations, and a more or less predictable routine. And indeed, as I looked more closely, I began to notice patterns that had previously escaped me. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, Marina always went out with people driving cars or commercial vans. Tuesdays and Thursdays, she went out in smaller private cars. And on weekends, when I went out, it was always in that blue van with the sticker I couldn't read. This made sense if she was working in different locations. Office buildings on weekdays, private residences on some days, and perhaps a larger location on the weekends. On Thursday, something happened that confirmed my suspicions, but also left me even more confused. I was returning from the pharmacy around 8 o'clock when I saw Marina at the bus stop on the main avenue. She was wearing normal clothes, but she was carrying a large backpack and wearing very comfortable shoes. I stopped the car and offered a ride. Marina was surprised, but accepted. "Thanks, Ruth. My usual pickup crew had a problem with their car today." "No problem. Where are you going?" "It's a building there in the central region, not too far away." During the journey, I tried to make conversation without seeming invasive. "Marina, Carlos told me you're working nights now." She tensed, but replied, "Yeah, it's temporary, just until I find something better." "There's nothing wrong with that, Marina. Honest work is always worthy." She looked at me, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. It's hard, Ruth. I worked in the same store for 20 years. I knew all the customers. I felt useful. And now you're still useful, just in a different way." We arrived at the building she'd indicated. It was a tall office building with several businesses. Marina got out of the car, thanked us for the ride, and entered the building. Through the glass entrance, I saw her talking to a security guard and showing some form of identification. Returning home, I felt bad for all the suspicions I'd created. Marina was just a hard-working woman, struggling, trying to maintain her dignity while doing what she had to support her family. But there was still something bothering me. If it was just cleaning work, why so much secrecy? Why couldn't she just say, "I'm working night cleaning"? Why did she and Carlos seem to be keeping so much information to themselves? On Friday, I decided I needed to stop this obsession. Marina had a right to privacy. She had the right not to share the details of her professional life if she didn't want to. I was going to stop being nosy and go back to just being a respectful neighbor. But fate had other plans for me. Around 10 o'clock on Friday night, I was watching television when I heard a strange noise on the street. It sounded like someone was rummaging through the trash or looking for something. I went to the window to see what it was and saw Marina standing on the sidewalk, talking on her cell phone, looking distressed. I opened the window to listen better, and I could hear a few loose phrases. "You can't cancel now. We already agreed. I need this money today." Marina was having a problem, and even though I tried to respect her privacy, I couldn't remain indifferent. I put on a coat and went to the sidewalk. "Marina, is everything okay?" She quickly hung up the phone and tried to smile. "Hi, Ruth. Yes, you are, thank you." But it was obvious that everything wasn't okay. Marina looked distressed, worried. "The people who were going to pick you up didn't come?" "Yeah, something unexpected happened. I'll have to go by bus." "Marina, it's almost 10 o'clock at night. Which bus will come now?" "Oh, yes. Or I'll call an Uber." Uber. And suddenly, all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place in my head in a completely different way. "Marina," I said slowly, "do you work for Uber?" She looked at me with an expression of surprise and relief at the same time. "Like you? Different men, different cars. You're not working as a cleaner. You're working as an Uber driver." Marina sighed and leaned against the streetlight on the corner. "Not exactly, Ruth. It's more complicated than that." "Then explain it to me, because I've been trying to understand it for weeks." She was silent for a moment, as if deciding whether she could trust me. "Ruth, do you promise you won't tell anyone? At least not yet?" "I promise." Marina took a deep breath and began to tell the truth. "When the store closed, I was desperate. We have bills to pay, the mortgage, and Carlos's salary alone didn't cover everything. I looked everywhere for a job, but you know how hard it is for women our age. I knew. Unfortunately, I knew very well. Then a friend of mine, Lucia, told me about a job. She works for a cleaning company, but it's not regular cleaning. It's specialized cleaning for after events, parties, conventions, that kind of thing. And the men who come to get you? They're company drivers, or sometimes employees who have their own cars and make extra money giving rides to those without transportation. The company works in different locations every night, so each day a different person picks me up. That made so much more sense, and it explained why Marina dressed up. Even though it was cleaning work, it was cleaning at events, places where appearance mattered. But why so much secrecy? Marina blushed. Because it's not just cleaning, Ruth. The company mainly works with nighttime events, parties, weddings, graduations, concerts. And the strangest part is that they pay really well, more than any normal cleaning job. And what's the problem with that? It's just that parties are often different. Rich people's parties, you know? Expensive weddings, fancy corporate events. And sometimes we have to... How can I explain? We have to blend in with the guests. Now I was completely lost. Mix in how? The company doesn't just hire people for cleaning. They hire people to do everything. Serve drinks, welcome guests, even pretend to be guests to make events seem more lively. My God, Marina was working as an extra at rich people's parties. So you don't clean? Sometimes I clean, yes. But most of the time I serve drinks, greet people at the entrance, or just hang out at the event to make it seem fuller. That's why I have to dress up so much. So every day is a different place. What about the shed I saw you entering? Marina's eyes widened. Did you follow me? I blushed with embarrassment. I'm sorry, Marina. I was really worried, thinking that I was cheating on Carlos. And... Marina laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in weeks. Ruth, The warehouse is where the company stores the uniforms, equipment, and costumes. Depending on the event, we dress up right there. Sometimes it's waitress clothes. Sometimes it's formal wear. Sometimes it's even a costume. Fantasy. That's why Marina sometimes came back with bags. They were her event clothes. And Carlos knows everything? You know, he doesn't like it very much. He thinks it's a bit, I don't know, a bit fake. But he understands that it's temporary, that we need the money. Marina, this isn't fake. It's honest work. You're providing a service. You're earning money with dignity. I know, Ruth, but it's weird, you know? Sometimes I serve drinks to people who make in an hour what I make in a month. Sometimes I have to pretend to be a guest at parties I could never afford. It's confusing. Now I understood everything. The fatigue, because this kind of work is physically and emotionally draining. The secrecy, because Marina felt ashamed of being in that situation. The late night hours, because they were nighttime events. The different cars, because they were different drivers. And Carlos's affection, because he knew his wife was sacrificing herself for the family. Marina, I said, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You're being brave. You're facing the situation. Many people in your position would have given up. She started crying. It's just hard, Ruth. There are nights when I come home feeling small. Seeing how rich people live, seeing how easy it is for them to spend in one night what would be our 3-month salary. I hugged Marina right there, on the sidewalk, at 10 at night. But you're doing what you need to do, and that's valuable. Lucia, my friend who recommended me for this job, has been on vacation for 2 weeks, so I've been working almost every day. She comes back next week, and then I'll go back to working just a few days a week. Ah, that's why Marina was going out every night lately. She was covering for her friend. And do you like the job? Some parts, yes. It's interesting to see what rich people's parties are like, how they live, and sometimes you meet cool people. Other employees who are in the same situation. But mostly, I like the money I get at the end of the night. At that moment, a car arrived. It was a blue Corsa, driven by a woman in her 40s. It's Sandra, Marina said. She's taking me to the event today. What kind of event is it today? 15th birthday. A huge party, in a fancy hall. I'm going to work as a waitress. Marina said goodbye to me and got into the car. But before she left, she rolled down the window. Ruth, thank you for caring about me, and thank you for not judging me. Marina, you are a special neighbor, and now that I know the truth, if you need anything, you can count on me. The car drove away, and I was left standing there on the sidewalk, processing everything I had discovered. Marina wasn't cheating on her husband. Marina was working hard, hosting nightclubs, serving drinks, and pretending to be a guest at wealthy people's parties, all to help support her family after she lost her job. And I, like a gossipy neighbor, had created 1,000 false theories, had followed her lead, had imagined things that didn't exist. I felt ashamed, but also relieved. On Saturday morning, I woke up wanting to do something for Marina. I didn't know what, but I felt I needed to show my support in some way. Around 10 in the morning, I knocked on her door. Carlos answered. Carlos, I talked to Marina last night. She told me about the job. He looked surprised. Did she tell you? I did. And I wanted to say that you can count on me for anything. If you need a ride, if you need to talk, if you need any help. Carlos smiled, a smile of relief. Thank you, Ruth. This means a lot to us. And another thing, Carlos, there's nothing wrong with what Marina is doing. It's honest work. It's dignity. I know, but it's hard to see the person you love sacrificing themselves like that. Marina appeared behind Carlos. She was in her home clothes, without makeup, and looked as if she'd had little sleep. But she seemed lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Ruth! Oi! Hi, Marina. I came to bring you something. I had made a chocolate cake, one of those really homemade ones, with a nice frosting. Oh, Ruth, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. You are special neighbors. and I want you to know that you can count on me. They invited me for coffee, and for the first time in weeks I was able to talk to Marina without mysteries, without secrets, without crazy theories in my head. "Ruth," Marina said at one point, "you can't imagine how hard it was to keep this secret. I was dying to talk to someone about work, about the things I see at parties, about how weird it is to serve drinks to people who won't even look me in the eye. Now you can talk to me whenever you want. And there are so many stories, Ruth. There are parties that spend on flowers what I would earn in 6 months. There are people who leave food on the plate that would feed a family. It's another world. But you're learning about this other world. It might come in handy in the future. Like this, you're seeing how the events market works. You're meeting people in the field. You're learning about organization and customer service. Who knows, maybe one day you'll start your own company." Marina laughs. "Ruth, you are very optimistic. I'm realistic. You have experience in sales. Now you're gaining experience in events. This is knowledge that can bear fruit." I stayed up chatting with them until noon. It was nice to see Marina relaxed, talking freely about her work, sharing her experiences, her struggles, and also the interesting things she saw. When I was leaving, Marina walked me to the gate. "Ruth, thank you. You have no idea how good it is to have a neighbor who understands, who doesn't judge. Marina, we women have to support each other. Life isn't easy for anyone, but it's even harder when we feel alone." "You're right. And now I can even tell you the rich people's gossip," she said, laughing. "Ah, now yes. Now you interest me." I joked back. Guys, you can't imagine how much better I felt after finding out the truth. For weeks, I'd been creating stories in my head, imagining dramas, betrayals, terrible secrets, and in the end, I was just a brave woman, doing what she could to support her family. Subscribe to the channel, because you know I have new neighborhood stories to tell every week. Like the video. If you enjoyed this twist, I bet you didn't see it coming. And leave a comment. Have you ever been in a similar situation? Have you ever judged someone without knowing the full story? Marina continues working at events, but now that her friend is back from vacation, she only works 3 days a week. And she's also found another job, part-time at a new store that opened in the mall. It's not the same as before, but it's a fresh start. And I learned an important lesson. Before creating theories about other people's lives, it's best to know the facts, because sometimes reality is completely different from what we imagine. Sometimes what seems mysterious is just someone trying to live with dignity in a difficult situation. Carlos and Marina have become close friends. She tells me stories about the events, without revealing details that compromise the client's privacy, of course. And I share neighborhood gossip with her. It's a fair exchange. And you know what's most interesting? After learning the truth about Marina, I started noticing other things in the neighborhood. How many people have routines that seem strange, but are actually just people working, striving, doing what they can to survive? The man who leaves in uniform at 2 a.m.? He works in a 24-hour factory. The woman who comes in late every night. She's a nurse and works night shifts. The young man who receives strange deliveries during the day. He builds computers at home to sell online. Everyone has a story, folks. Everyone's fighting their battles, facing their challenges. And sometimes, what seems mysterious is just real life happening. Marina told me something I'll never forget. "Ruth, what hurt me wasn't the work itself. It was the feeling that I was alone, that no one understood what I was going through. And that's why I tell these stories here on the channel, to remind us that we're all trying to do our best, each in our own way, each with our own circumstances. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to be notified when I post new videos. Like the video, share it with your friends, and leave your thoughts on this twist in the comments. And remember, the next time you see a neighbor doing something that seems strange before you start making theories, why not offer a chat, a coffee, or a helping hand? Sometimes all someone needs is to know they're not alone. Until the next story, everyone. And remember, behind the scenes, there's always new gossip waiting to be discovered.